We are live. Good evening, and welcome to the community of the Holy Spirit. You're joining our normal Saturday evening worship service, and you guys are in for a treat because we have a very dear friend of Bishop Kirby in this ministry that's going to be sharing practical knowledge with us, Dr. Carolyn Driver. It's my pleasure, our pleasure to have her. It's been a number of years, I think since pre-COVID, probably.
I can't remember.
Since we've had her with us, and I'm sure you're going to be blessed with what she has to share with you this evening. So without any further ado, this is Dr. Carolyn Driver.
Oh, thank you.
And we will begin our worship service.
Thank you, and good evening to everyone. So wonderful to see you, and good evening to those who are watching. We want to thank Bishop Kirby for the invite to come because this is family. I'm on Bishop's board, so I do get to see him and talk with him, and we'll meet for lunch to dialogue. And so thank you, Bishop, and we pray that all is well with you and ask God to bless what you're doing and that the fruit would remain. So I wanted to do something very practical, and I've been sharing with those that were here earlier. You know how in church they'll say, you got to love one another, and we all agree with that, and but we don't ever tell. And I was sharing with how there's a real famous prophet that was giving a word this past week for the month of July, and he was talking about to wade out and go deeper and get a boat. And we're saying, okay, if that's going to take me deeper with the Lord spiritually, I definitely want to do that. But he kept saying that. He must have said it 3 to 4 times as an instruction, but he never told anyone how to do that. And so I do a lot of counseling, as many of you know, lots and lots of counseling, and the majority of my counseling are with the fivefold ministry, or leaders or young leaders being raised up. And when I see that they, with their own struggles, if they knew the practical things that I'm going to share with you tonight, it would make their life and their relationships easier. Because what I'm going to share with you, I required of my leaders. They had to be trained in these things every year when the new year started, because I wanted them to become experts in it. And leaders definitely have to have this knowledge. But if everybody had this knowledge, and the congregation was always welcome to attend, but if everybody had this knowledge, then it would make every relationship that you have, whether it's family, church, work, and even with little children, your grandkids. I mean, you can't name a relationship that this information can't help. And we should become experts in it. And we become experts in the things I'm going to share tonight. And I'm going to even give you books to read for you to get more information, because all I can do tonight is kind of touch on the topics briefly. But if we would all become experts in it, and I feel like the church should be requiring us to be in classes to learn this and be retrained in it and retrained in all of this, so that we can have a good rapport with people. Marriages would heal. I do require a lot of the stuff when I'm doing marriage counseling, and as part of your homework and part of what we do. And I've had more men to tell me this than women. Dr. Driver, if I had had this information, I probably would still be married to my first spouse. Because conflict is created by a lot of different things, but we don't even have the real knowledge of what's creating the conflict. So I'm going to start tonight, and I'm going to go through several things, and I'm going to just touch on them briefly. And then you get the materials, you purchase the books, you go to seminars on it. There's YouTube stuff on it. And you start learning this and practicing it. Don't just get the knowledge. Some Christians are just collectors of knowledge to implement it. And one of my spiritual sons said to me one time, he says, Mom, you're different than anybody I've ever met. I said, well, how? How am I different? He says, when you learn something, you put it immediately into practice. I did not know. I was in my 50s at that time. I did not know that people didn't do that. I really didn't. So I pray that you will be stimulated to want to have better relationships with all types of people. I can get on an airplane and I can meet someone, and within 10 to 15 minutes, I know quite a few things off of this list. I already know about them. And I'm still going to be Carolyn Driver, how God wired me to be. But I know how to make adjustments in interacting with them to develop good relationship and good rapport. And I've not only been able to do that here in the States, but, I've been to 15 different nations and doing development and training, not only in the church world, but in the political world, the government and corporations. And I don't say this to brag. I say this to motivate you to want to learn this stuff. Everybody loves me. They just love me. They all request me to come back. And the missionaries and pastors or leaders who've asked me to come, so they've never seen that before at all. And all I'm doing is implementing and practicing what I'm going to be sharing with you tonight. Okay, are you ready? Yes. All right. Okay. Well, I want to start with a scriptural basis, of course, which would be 1 Corinthians 13. That's known as the love chapter. And when we can implement love on a practical level, relationships will be healed. But just to give us a scriptural basis, the New International Version says, if I speak in the tongues of men or of angels, but do not have love, I'm only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. In other words, you're a religious noise. And verse 2 says, if I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have faith that can move mountains, but if I don't love, I am nothing. Love is a big deal to God because God what? Love. That's right, he's love. If I give all I possess to the poor and give over my body to hardships that I may boast, but do not have love, I gain nothing. And now with verse 4, he starts giving us a description of love. And you look at just do a flash in your head of different relationships, and let's see if you're loving. It says love is patient. Love is kind. It don't mean sometimes. This is a state of being. I'm talking about this is a state of being, that you are patient and that you are kind. And it does not envy. It doesn't boast. It's not proud. It does not dishonor others. It's not self-seeking. It's not easily angered. And it keeps no records of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoice with the truth. It always protects. It always trusts. It always hopes. It always perseveres. So if you just look at your life in the last week, month, year, how would you rate yourself on that? And then with verse 8, it says love never fails. And see, I'm going to give you practical stuff to learn and do so that you can truly love, because love doesn't fail. But where there are prophecies, they'll cease. And where there are tongues, they will be stilled. Where there's knowledge, it will pass away. For we know in part and we prophesy in part. But when completeness comes, what is in part disappears. So when I was a child, I talked like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. But when I became man, I put the ways of childhood behind me. And this is something I always told my leaders, that if you want to know how mature you are, would you like to know how mature you are? As how do you handle the weaknesses of others? How you handle the weakness of others is a revealer of your maturity. For now we see only a reflection as in a mirror, then we shall see face to face. Now I know in part, then I shall know fully, even as I'm fully known. And now these three remain: faith, hope, love. And the greatest of these is what? Is love. So if you're going to love people, you need to become an expert in temperaments and personalities. Some people say there's 32 personalities, some say 16, but actually there's 4 personalities that was discovered by the father of medicine, Hippocrates, by studying the blood and bile of his cadavers. And after all these hundreds and hundreds of years of studying human behavior, what God showed him is still the truth. There's 4 basic temperaments, but the qualities under it is how other people are coming up with 8, 16, and 32. But if you know these 4 basic temperaments and the characteristics of strengths and weaknesses, then there's just 4 basic personalities. Now, there's choleric, some say choleric, there's sanguine, there's melancholy, and there's phlegmatic. Now, we think if everybody was just like us, everything would be great. But listen, people are not like us. God wires each person with their personality and their motivational gifting. And I would even venture to say their gender, according to the earth assignments he's going to give them. So there's no right or wrong personality style or temperament. They're just different. But when people don't act like we do and process like we do and think like we do and take actions and behavior like we do, we begin to criticize and to judge. Well, the emotional need of a choleric is control and credit. The emotional need of a melancholy is for everything to be perfect. The emotional need of a sanguine is fun, and the emotional need of fun and attention. And the emotional need of a phlegmatic is peace at all costs. In fact, they really should learn to speak up because they want peace. They take and they take and they take and they take. And then they have this big explosion. And then it's Katie bar the door type situation because they're not letting it out a little at a time. And so we have different emotional needs. So if I'm working with a choleric person, I make sure that I give them credit, and what parts they can control, I let them control. If I'm working with a sanguine, I know before we can get down to the project or what we're working on, I've got to interact on a personal level. Well, how was your weekend? What did you do for the 4th? Well, where are you going on your next trip? You have to do that with a sanguine before you can do the project. If you just go in and start with them on the project, you're going to lose them because that's a need that they have. And there's nothing wrong with that emotional need because God is the one who put it in us. If I'm working with a melancholy, I know that everything has to be lined up perfect. Now, if you're having someone put out your newsletters or write things for you, you want a melancholy because they're going to make sure it's perfect before they'll release it because they can't release it till it's perfect. But I'm working with a melancholy now that can't get their book after 3 years ready because, it's not perfect enough. They can't, and most single people are melancholies because they can't find someone perfect enough. And then the phlegmatic, because I'm a choleric sanguine, so a choleric two clerics can go at it, and all the other temperaments will think we're fighting. We're just having a good time. And so I know I can't be, my full cleric self, but that's who I am, if I'm working with a phlegmatic. Because in the early days of my life, before I learned this stuff, people who loved me really loved me, but the people who couldn't stand me, they couldn't stand me. And I never could understand why, because my heart toward them was good. In my heart, I had love. And I was trying to minister to them in my choleric way, but they can't receive the choleric way because they're not wired that way. So I know how to adjust. Before I knew this information, it was the first year that me and my husband were married. We got married in November, then we had December. I was a poor teacher who had a pair of shoes that had holes in them. He bought me 6 pairs of shoes for Christmas. Now that should have been a hint, right? Because that's a very practical thing, and they do very practical things. And the second Christmas, there was a box about 3 feet long, about 2 feet wide, about 3 feet high, and it was heavy. And I knew what he had done. Now remember, I don't know this information. He had put bricks in there to fool me, but in it was going to be a fur coat, and on the top was going to be an envelope that with reservations at this very was it the Abbey? There was a very restaurant that at that time was very popular, and I knew that's what it was. So Christmas morning, I run in there, I open it up, and it's a box of stainless steel pots and pans. And I burst into tears crying. I felt so unloved. And he's standing there startled, and he didn't know what to think, because he's thinking, as a melancholy who gives practical gifts, that he had done something really wonderful, by doing that, because we needed pots and pans. Listen, we'll be married 53 years in November. I still have those stainless steel waterless pots and pans. They have a lifetime guarantee on them. and I still use them. And about that time, this was in 71, they cost like $600 in 71. That was a lot of money. So you see why he thought he had done something really wonderful. And that's usually how we do. We minister to people based on who we are, instead of ministering to people based on who they are. And I was doing the same thing to him. I was buying him fun things, or what I thought was fun things, but he'd rather have a screwdriver, a hammer, or a new golf bag, something like that. But I didn't know. I didn't understand temperaments, and didn't even know there was such a thing as temperaments or personality style. And so it's really important that you learn this, and you can see it in babies and toddlers. People get amazed with me because I say, "Oh, that's a little sanguine boy." Well, how you know that? Well, he's talking to everybody, wanting to be hugged by everybody, And then I say, "Oh, that's a little choleric girl." How do you know that? Because she's ordering everybody around, including you. And then a little phlegmatic child, it's just peaceful, doesn't cause any problems, doesn't cry. And then a little melancholy child, they want everything lined up perfectly, like their clothes, their toys. So you see how God wired us, even when we're just toddlers. And then unfortunately, we experience life, and we have all these life things that happen to us, and which get filtered through our weaknesses, because every temperament style has strength and has weaknesses. And see, as a choleric, we can take charge, get things done, make things happen, but we can become taken to an extreme. We become bossy and impatient. See, all those people who didn't like me back then, they just thought I was bossy, because they were wired differently. In fact, I have a bishop who has sent a key leader in his church to me, and I've had 4 sessions with her so far, because she does all the big projects for their church. but she has to work with different department heads, and nobody likes her. Nobody likes her. And it's hurting her feelings, and it's causing issues in the church. And I just see her as a young Carolyn Driver, who could make all this stuff happen. But see, we don't know that we're coming across to people differently. We can, as a cleric, we can cause people feel like they're being run over by a Mack truck and not even have a clue at all. And so I'm teaching her how to work with leaders of different departments. And even in her secular job, she needs this information. And she said that since she started it, that she and her husband are getting along better. Because I will say one thing for this young girl. She is like me. She's implementing everything and practicing everything. And every week can give me examples of situations where she's using it. And Kevin, I think you're saying when phlegmatic, right? Did I remember correctly?
I think that's correct.
Yeah. Uh-huh. And you're melancholy. Are you melancholy choleric? Okay. So they're opposites. So they're not going to process things the same. They're not going to see things the same. And it can create conflict. Like with me and my husband, he's choleric melancholy, and I'm choleric sanguine. So our choleric fought for who was going to be in control. And then my sanguine was always getting on his nerves, his melancholy nerves, but his melancholy was always raining on my sanguine parade, And but if we had understood all of this stuff and had implemented understanding, you really need to study all four temperaments, the strengths and the weaknesses of each one. And the book I'm going to recommend has an evaluation in it. So the first thing you want to do is evaluate yourself. And you want to be honest with your answers, because there's no wrong answers. It's just different. And so I'm going to recommend that you start out with Florence Littauer's book, Your Personality Tree. And if you study that book and get to know it inside out, and then I have a thing that I put together, it's $20, but it's lists and charts. I've taken all this information that I've learned, and I've put it in a simple way for reference. And but you need to have a basic understanding before you would even purchase that book from me. So tell your neighbor, I'm so glad that God wired us differently. Because see, we balance each other out. God didn't make mistakes in this. And then we need to become an expert in motivational gifts. Motivational gifts is listed in Romans chapter 12. And there's 7 of them. And I'll see if I can remember all of them right off my head. There's teacher, there's administrator, there's exhorter. See, I already forgot what I said. See, teacher, administrator, exhorter, giver, servant, mercy or compassion, and then perceiver. In some Bibles, it's listed as prophet, but it's not talking about the office of a prophet there. In Romans chapter 12, it's not even talking about the office of a teacher. It's talking about motivation. What's in you? What gift has God put in you as your motivation? And I remember one time teaching the new beginners, the gentleman that was over the Department of Education. For several Sundays, he kept coming to my door wanting to know, have you given the motivational gift evaluation yet? I said, no. And every week he'd be waiting there for me. Have you given the motivation? I said, no, because, there's a certain time frame in how I want to do it. I said, what's the issue? He said, well, we need more teachers. And I said, Tony, you can be teacher motive and not be in the office of a teacher. He didn't know that. Because, see, he's wanting a teacher that'll stand up behind a podium and teach. But teaching can be done a lot of different ways, through drama, through music, through art, through poetry, through plays. According to 1 Corinthians 14, the first few verses, it says that God gives, no, the Holy Spirit gives us the gift, the motivational gift. This is, I think it's 1 Corinthians 14, verses 4, 5, and 6, that the Holy Spirit gives us the gift, that Jesus decides how that gift will be expressed. And God gives the results, which is usually conversion, growth, and maturity. And so we have the Trinity involved in our motivational gifts. And whatever your top three are, I call it your Moses and Aaron and you'll usually score high in one and then have two closely behind, and the others will be low. Now, when I took the motivational gift evaluation, I was teaching a class, and we all took it at the same time. And it was my first time to do it. And on mercy or compassion, I scored 0. And I cried. I couldn't believe that I had no mercy, no compassion. And they said, well, Pastor Carolyn, no, we've seen you be merciful when the situation required it, but it is not my natural way. My natural way is to say, okay, let me tell you why you're in the mess you're in. You did A, B, C, D, so you need people like me to point it out, and then you need compassion people to come and say, yes, but listen, this is what God can do with that. So we used to, at the church where I was in the 80s, in the early 90s, I taught all the staff this. And then the paid staff, what we did, we began to do counseling according to our gift. So the senior pastor, he was mercy. The other male associate, he was teacher. And I was administrator perceiver. And so they would send them first to me for me to tell them while they were in a mess. Then they would go to the senior pastor, who was merciful, who would make them feel all good again. And then he would assign them over to Pastor Floyd, who was teacher, and he'd work with them to develop a plan, if it was the financial plan, plan, or whatever. So we began to do team coaching to our gifting, and we got much better results, And so even when people call me and want counseling, I said, well, let me tell you my style, because I may not be the counselor for you, and I know I'm not the counselor for everyone. But it's a funny story. It reminded me of this bishop up in New York City. This was about 3 years ago. His youth pastor, Pastor Josh, he sent him to me, and he was supposed to talk with me once a week in counseling. After the first week, he went to his bishop and said he wasn't going to come back. And he said, well, if you want your job, you will. So I start counseling Pastor Josh every week. And after 3 months, I get a call from the bishop, and he's laughing. And I said, what you laughing about, Bishop? He said, Pastor Josh told me he's finally got you figured out. I said, really? What did he say? He said, she is part Paula Deen and part New York gangster. And so I shared that with people, and one time when it first happened, I was telling some people, and there's some former clients in there, and after everybody laughed, they said, it's true. But your personality, comes out even in our ministry. Your personality, your motivational gifts, God gave that to you. He gave it to you. And he wired you the way that he's wired you for the earth assignments that he knew that he would give to you. So we can't criticize how God wired another person, but we need to study the temperaments and personalities and become a master in it. We need to study motivational gifting. I'll tell you how motivational gifting happened in a church situation. We went to this trailer park that had over 500 trailers. We would go once a month, and we would take food and clothes and play all kinds of games with the kids. But we set out tables, with all the food. Well, there was two ladies who got there earlier, and they are sanguine, fun, and they're exhorters, encourage and what have you. And they put all the food out on the table, but they just put the food on the table. This next leader came, and I saw her when she got out of the car, and she looked at the tables. And she's melancholy. Everything has to be perfect. Everything has to be well done. And I could see she was totally disgusted. Now, these are leaders who got training every year, but you have to practice it. And I could tell she was disgusted. And she walked over to the table and she started putting the corn with the corn, the green beans with the green beans, the peanut butter with the peanut butter. And these other two who had put it all out and thought they had done a wonderful job are watching this. And I see what's going on. They're getting offended and they're getting furious. So I went on wall the building and I said, let me explain to you what's going on. It's melancholy. And you know how melancholies have to have things in order. And she's not saying that you did a bad job. She don't even know how this got put this way. But she can't rest until it's all in order. She's not trying to offend you. Had I not been there when I was there, I'm sure we would have had a big thing going on. Because the melancholy was a white woman, and the two girls that put it up were black girls. And so then it becomes something that it's not. It'll become racial. You know what I'm saying? Which it wasn't at all. But I see how people sometimes can think it is because you don't know this stuff, or if you know it, you don't ever use it, which is a shame. What did the Lord say? He said, my people perish. Why? For lack of knowledge. It's like Miles Monroe. I love what he said about marriage. He said, marriage is not a love issue. It's a lack of knowledge issue. And I see that in everything. If we're having trouble with finances, it's a lack of knowledge issue. If we're having marriage problems or relationship problems, it's a lack of knowledge. And sometimes our sickness and disease is because of a lack of knowledge. And so it's really important. So with motivational gifts, the servant motive meets the practical needs. The mercy or compassion motive meets the emotional needs. The teacher meets the mental needs. The administrator meets the governmental needs. The perceiver, I'm trying to compare it to the part of the body. I guess it would be the exhort. No, the exhorter is the mouth. I was going to say perceiver. Let me think about that. But the exhorter is the verbal, to need, and the giver is financial needs. But see, sometimes people who have the gift of giving, they get misunderstood because they give. I mean, that's their motivation. And usually people who have the gift of giving usually prosper. Usually there's finances or a flow of finances through their life. And they give, but most people don't, if they find out, they don't understand. They think they're trying to buy the attention of the leaders. They don't know that that's a gift in the body to help meet financial needs. So if we had somebody that was sick and homebound, and this is how I did it when I was on staff. If someone was sick and homebound, the first person I would send out would be the administrator. And they would look over everything, talk with the person. They'd find out what all the needs were, what all was required. They'd come back and they'd share that with me. And then I would send the compassion person that would go and would console them and touch them and hug them and what have you. And then I would send the exhorter, and the exhorter would say, by the stripes of Jesus, you are healed, and you're going to be okay. He took those stripes so that we could be. They're going to start teaching them, the scripture. Who am I leaving out? The giver was the one with the financial. Oh, the giver. The giver will come and they'll kind of look around, and before they leave, they'll pull something out of their pocket and put it in their hand. said, no, this is just between you and me. And the servant motive person, when they come in, they notice all the practical things that need to be done. Like the floor needs to be vacuumed, the dishes need to be put in the dishwasher, a load of laundry needs to be done, or maybe we need to schedule someone to go pick up the kids from school. Do you see how smart God is? If we would learn these 7 motivational gifts in and out, we could minister to people better, so much better. And it's the same thing like greeters at a meeting. You don't want to put a melancholy as a greeter. Hi, how are you? Where would you like to sit? Choleric would be, you're going to sit over there. The sanguine, oh, hi, so glad to see you, and let me help you. We're all different. God made us different on purpose and intentionally. Tell your neighbor, God made us different on purposely and intentionally. And you need to become an expert. I don't mean just know that this exists, become an expert. So the book you want to buy is Discovering Your God-Given Gifts by Don and Katie Fortune, Fortune. And in the back of their book, they have a whole list of materials and teaching aids and evaluation aids that they have developed that you can order from their organization. Now, I'm doing something the law leaders won't ever tell you. Are you recognizing that tonight? Most people don't want to share their information. They want you to think that there's some, that we're so smart and we're so wise. But apostles, prophets, evangelists, pastors, and teachers, we're to pray, we're to fast, and we're to equip God's people to do the work of the ministry. So our job is not to impress you. Our job is to equip, to equip others. And so I want to briefly talk about gender. I didn't know that there were differences when I was young and first married, and men and females in terms of thinking and processing, let alone, personalities, motivational gifts. And I can remember going up to my husband and in my choleric way saying, we got this, and this, and what you want to do about this and this and this, and I'm standing there waiting for an answer. And he's hemming and he's hawing. And it's making me mad because I've got to know the answers to this. Same thing with my senior pastor when I was on staff. I'd go in there and I'd have my list. You got me over 14 things. I need to know this, and this. And I did not know I was asking my husband or my senior pastor to do something that's biologically impossible. The left and right hemisphere of the brain in men and women, there's a distance in the spacing, right down through here, the spacing in between. Well, women, we can experience something, have our thoughts about it, make conclusions, decisions about it, and tell what we think about it like that. Men, because of the distance in the left and right hemisphere, cannot do that. Men go to their cave and think things over. And here I was pushing him, and getting upset because he wouldn't giving me a direct answer. Well, he don't know this gender stuff either. So I didn't know that I was just being a female, and I didn't know he was just being a male. And because I didn't know that, when he would go into his cave, I'd become a cave buster. I'm there at the doorway. What's wrong? Nothing. Well, something's got to be wrong. And the more I'd be at the cave as a cave buster, the deeper he'd go into the cave. And then I'd feel unloved and what I'd done wrong. It's nothing. So now when I go to my husband, or if I'm working with a gentleman on a project, I'll say, usually I'll not only say it, but I'll have a list. And I'll say, are there anything on this list that you can give your input on now? And if so, they will. If they say no, I'm not offended by that or upset by that. I said, well, when would you like to meet again and come back to discuss this? And when I started doing that with the senior pastor where I was on staff, it totally changed our dynamics because he was sanguine. So I had to go in, and I'm thinking I'm wasting my time, but I didn't know it. But I got to go in and say, hello, how were you and the family? When you did karate class Thursday night, how did it go? If I don't do that, he'll never be ready to dialogue about anything, let alone be able to give me answers. And so with my senior pastor, he would tell me what he could or couldn't make decisions on. And he'd say, well, I can, let's touch base again on Wednesday, or let's touch base again. And I would, and he could do it because, see, he needed time to process it. And I'm standing there, demanding answers, got my foot going, demanding answers. And so that's one thing. And then one thing that men complain about all the time about women is that we talk, and they're waiting and waiting and waiting for us to get to the bottom line. Just get to the bottom line. Just get to the bottom line. We go around the mulberry bush. We tell them everything. Am I right, guys? It's okay to say that. Thank you for your honesty, because it's true. Okay. And so, but see, that's what women do. We give all the details and we tell everything before we ever get to the point. What you do with a guy, give them the bottom line. And if they want any details, they will ask you. Now, because you're used to giving details, it'll almost kill you not to do it. But don't do it. They will ask you if they want details, give the bottom line. But now I tell men, when you come home from work, if you give your wife the first 15 or 30 minutes and just listen to her talk. But see, y'all want to fix it. If we got a problem, we tell you a problem, y'all will fix it. You want to jump in there and fix it. But that's not what we're wanting. We just want to vent, because women problem solve through verbalization. I want you to get that, men. Women problem solve through verbalization. So give them the first 15 or 30 minutes. Let them talk. And all you have to do is go, okay. Tell me more. What do you think you might do? Don't give any advice. So women need to be listened to, and men need the bottom line. And then as women, we want to help. Helping my husband was communicating to him that I don't trust him. Like if he was underneath the kitchen sink trying to fix it, I'd be right down there with him trying to see how I could help. And he'd always seem irritated, and I didn't know why. Because see, that's saying to him, I don't trust you to be able to handle this. And it was so hard for me to wrap my head around. Just say, Larry, if you need some help, if you need something, just let me know. Because I thought I was showing love, go down there to help. And when I teach the gender class at the university, I'd ask the men, is this true? And they'd say, yes, professor, tell them. And see, but we think we're supposed to help. But when we're helping and they didn't ask us for help, or you didn't make the comment, if you need help, let me know, and you go on and do what you want to do, they see that as that you don't trust them to do what they're doing. Same thing with directions in the car. If they don't ask you to help them with directions in the car, do not help them. Even if you drive around Atlanta 285 5 times, they'll ask when they're ready to ask, or you can ask permission. Would you like me to help with this? And if they say no, don't get offended. Most likely they'll say yes. But what we're doing out of the love of our heart does not communicate love to a guy. But now, one of his male friends could come in the back door and see him down, and you get down there with him, and it's not processed the same. That's just a guy helping a guy. But if we do it as women, we're showing that we don't trust. And there's so much more. I'm just giving you a few little things about gender differences that creates problems. And this is with the different gender of your children, your grandchildren, your nieces, nephews, grandmothers. and all this. In fact, I taught a class on gender for a Charisma Magazine conference, and they told me at the end of the conference, because I wasn't a primary speaker. I was like a seminar speaker in one of the rooms, and they couldn't make my tapes of my class fast enough. That my class that I did on gender sold more tapes than all the other sessions put together, because people did not know this information, and it's valuable information, and men and women both need it. So when I'm working with marriage couples, I use a book called Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus by Dr. John Gray. And they get a reading assignment, and at our next appointment, they have to tell me each one, what did you get out of that chapter, and how are you specifically going to implement it into the marriage. It can't be general. I want to know specifically. And we work through 13 chapters like that. And I've seen marriages saved just from that one book before we ever got on to personality and stuff. I'm working with someone that they're leaders in a church. They just recently got married. They hadn't even been married 5 or 6 months. I'm now having terrible trouble. But when they were talking to me, I'm trying to decide, do I want to do personalities and motivational gifts with them first, or gender first? So when I evaluated their problems, most of it was gender. So the gender book, and we're up to chapter 9, and it has saved their marriage, and we haven't even finished the book yet. I want you to become an expert in personalities and temperaments, an expert on motivational gifting, an expert on gender. It's going to help you, and then your knowledge that you share with others is going to help so many other people. Now, why am I doing this? Because we tell people what? Love one another. But we don't give them any info or anything to know how to do it. When you understand everybody's personality, strengths, and weaknesses, and you know how to adjust and to maneuver that, more people are going to feel love. Same thing with gender. And then there's a thing called meta programs. And meta programs, it's learned and it's hardwired into your subconscious. But by the time you learn it, it would almost take an act of God to change it. And Tony Robbins has a book, and I can't remember if it's Awaken the Giant Within You, or what was the other one? Yes, it is. Awaken the Giant Within You. Now, that book's about 500 pages. But in that book, he has chapters on meta programs. And we really need to understand meta programming. And there's about 10 different meta programs, but I'm going to share 2 with you that I see a lot, or maybe 3. One of the meta programs is how a person is motivated. Are they motivated by loss, or are they motivated by gain? Now, if you are ministering to people and you're teaching, you need to give examples of each, or a part of your audience won't even hear you. And so to give you an example, my sister and I are motivated by gain. My mom, who is sanguine phlegmatic, she's motivated by loss. She's a child of the Depression. And so when we would try to get mom to do things that would be good for her, she would, the more we tried to get her to do good things for herself, or try to help her do good things for us, the greater the resistance. I mean, just resist. And my sister and I, we just couldn't figure it out until I read Tony Robbins' book. And I realized my mother was motivated by loss. And one of the things I'd been trying to do with my mom, because she lived out in the country in Tennessee, but her church had a very active senior citizen ministry, because there was a lot of senior citizens, and they'd have a school bus, and they'd take a trip once a month somewhere to Nashville or different places. And I always wanted to send mother money, because I wanted mother to have what she wanted to have to eat, and to buy a souvenir, because the pastor had called me and was concerned about my mother. When everybody's in the restaurant eating, mother has brought like a bologna sandwich or something and never bought anything. And I that was breaking my heart. But if I sent mother money, she hoarded it back because she still wasn't eating in the restaurant with the others, and she still wasn't getting her a souvenir. But when I found out that my mother was voted at a loss, guess what I did? And y'all gonna think I'm mean, but I used my knowledge. Mama, I'm sending you $75 on this to go on this trip, and y'all gonna be eating lunch and an early dinner. I want you to get what you want on the menu and get you a souvenir. And I said, now, Mama, anything you don't spend, you have to send back to me. Now, see, I'm clear. And she knew I meant it. And she knew I would require it. And I would have. And so every time I sent her money, I'd say, one time they were going to Nashville during Christmas, I said, Mom, I'm sending you $100. You buy what you want to off of the menu, and you get something to remember your trip. And anything, and I said this every time, after any money you don't spend, you have to send back to me. Guess what my mother started doing? Spending it all, because she knew that she was going to what? Lose. Because she's motivated by loss. So if you're trying to talk to me or my sister about this program we need to do, or this class we need to take, and you're telling us, oh, if you don't do this, you'll lose this, this, and this, we'll start putting up resistance. It's just automatic. But if you start telling us all the things that we'll gain, all that we're going to get out, it's okay. What we're going to get out of it, then you've got us. We're going to sign up. We're going to go. We're going to do it. So there's people all around us that are either motivated by loss or motivated by gain. And the sooner you find out which one they are, start working with them according to that, the easier it's going to be for the relationship. Because see, me and my sister were butting heads with our mother, and we didn't want to butt heads with our mother. We always felt so awful afterwards, because we get on the phone when she, after we'd hung up with her, and we'd feel terrible. But we knew that Mom needed to do some stuff, and so we just started using the principle, the meta program of loss and gain. Then there are people who see how things are the same first, and who see how things are different first. But the majority of people in the United States, we see about 60-something% of us, we see sameness before we see differences. About 30-something% see differences before they see sameness. And how you can do that is determine that is put in your palm of your hand a quarter, a dime, and a nickel. And don't just ask this question: what do you see? Pretend that you're looking at a quarter, a dime, and a nickel, and tell me what you see. What do some of you see? Pardon?
40
cents, different sizes, all coins. So you got the idea, right? Well, people who see how the three coins are like, all silver, all round, all coins. What's another sameness? All well, anyway, that would be sameness. If they say different value, different sizes, whatever, they see differences first. And so let me give you a really good example of this. I was invited to train some leaders at a large AG church in Columbus, Georgia. And it was to train their leaders, and they had about 52 leaders. And it was the second day, and I started teaching them about meta programs. And as I taught about meta programs, because I could go into more depth, and I got to see sameness and see difference, and I gave lots of examples. And this man broke down and started bawling like a baby. He was crying so hard because the light bulb went off about what he was experiencing. Everybody else in that room saw sameness. He was the only one of all those leaders who saw differences. So when they would have brainstorming events about things for the ministry, everybody's giving their brainstorming idea, right? But he's always telling them why that won't work, because he's seeing what? The difference. And when the pastor and the leaders didn't know what was going on, and when I explained to them, y'all all are sameness. So when he gives his input, y'all think he's not a team player, and they started nodding their heads. Y'all think he's just trying to be difficult, and they all started nodding their head. And I said, y'all don't think he really cares about what y'all care about? They all started nodding their head. I said, it's not that at all. You're not utilizing him properly. I said, you don't allow him to be in the brainstorming session. Y'all do the brainstorming session. Have all the fun you want. But when you're finished, bring him in and let him give his input, because he'll save you from making a lot of mistakes. So there's about 10 different meta programs. Another one is Convincer. What does it take to convince you? Are we getting close out of time? Oh, 5. I'm not even going to get near my list. We'll have to pick up next week. Convincer. What does it take for a person to be convinced? Okay, I'll take me. I have to hear that it's different. I have to see that it's different, and I have to see it for a long period of time before I'm convinced. My sister, you just tell her, oh, they're different, they've changed. She believes it. So I think she's a Pollyanna, and she thinks I'm a hard nose, you know. But God helped me to help some Home Depot managers. This district manager had me to come in to train his managers. And he asked me if I could work with these two during break. And as I talked to them about what their problem was, and I mean, they were at one another, these two managers, and they were in the same Home Depot. And as I listened to them, I said, oh, I see, it's a convincer issue. And because there was one of the managers wanted to promote this person, and the other person didn't want to promote them. And because this person had messed up several times. And so one of the managers didn't want to promote them right now. They were going to have to really see a difference for a period of time. But this one wanted to go ahead and promote them. Well, it takes different things to convince. This one was convinced because, you know, the guy told him he'd do better, you know, so I'm convinced. The other one, they've got to see it and see it for a period of time. But I was able to solve it, and once they realized what was creating the conflict, they came up with a compromise on their own. The district manager couldn't thank me enough. And it's all because I know the meta programs. So Tony Robbins' book, Awaken the Giant Within, will teach you about those 10 meta programs. And so going back to our scriptural foundation of love, do you think that if you understood temperaments inside and out and could pick up like that, what one of their, you'll usually be a blend of the 4, that you can pick up one of the blend within 10 or 15 minutes, do you think it'd make your relationships better? Do you really think that? Wouldn't you be able to love them if you understood how they're wired? And what about motivational gifting? And you see how God's made everybody different, because a mercy motive person looks at a perceiver person and says, what a blankety blank blank, when they see how they interact with people. But when a perceiver motive person looks at a mercy compassion person working with the person, they're thinking, what a wimp. And it's just different ways of operating according to how God has wired you. So if you understood why that person's not handling that situation like you're handling it, don't you think you could love them better? because you're not at odds with them. Same thing with metaprogramming. And so we could love, and that's the goal. I'm trying to give you information that if you will become an expert in it, people will love you and you will love people. You will love people more because God is love, and we're to imitate Him, right? And loving doesn't mean you don't have healthy boundaries and things like that. I've got lots of healthy boundaries, but I know how to do boundaries with all the different motivational giftings, with the different temperaments, with different metaprogramming, and still keep a boundary, but I don't kill their spirit. They don't feel bad. And so I guess that's where I get my Paula Deen and a New York Gangster from. But we just thank you for being here tonight. And I hope this has helped you in some way. And we'll just pick up and continue with practical ways to love people. And that's what I'm giving you. Practical stuff, if you know and understand, will help you to love one another. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Amen. Wow, that was wonderful. The beautiful diversity that God has put in this earth and in us. Wow, thanks a lot, Dr. Driver. Appreciate that very much. You guys tune in next week. This will continue. You'll learn a lot. Refer to the resources that Dr. Driver gave you. I'm sure that you will find them to be a blessing. So now we're going to continue our worship service. We look forward to you tuning back in next week. God bless.
Yay!